Hey, welcome back to the About the Labor podcast here at VikingsTerritory.com. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we're talking a little bit about, once again, the Vikings' big victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll do some stuff on the Pro Bowl. 4 Vikings made the Pro Bowl, so we'll talk a little bit about that, and then also some of the guys that we consider to be snubs here. And then we'll finish up with some of the Rodgers news. If you guys didn't hear, he is headed to IR and will not play against the Vikings next week, so we'll do a little bit of rapid reaction stuff to that, and finish up with any other random stuff that we come up with along the way. So that's what type of show it's going to be today. So let's start us off here with a word from our sponsor. This is going to be Can Wonderland once again. Can Wonderland is a one-of-a-kind Twin Cities experience. Pack up the kids and check out the coolest indoor mini golf course in Minnesota. Don't worry, there are plenty of cocktails and artisan pizza for the adults. Don't forget to stop by Black Stack Brewing upstairs for a couple beers after mini golf. Can Wonderland, Black Stack Brewing, 2 spots that make the Twin Cities the best cities on earth. And for the thing that I'm going to insert that's something personal today, let me just tell you that Black Stack's beer is absolutely phenomenal. I go in there and I grab some of the New England IPA. It's like a hazy thing. I've mentioned this before on the show, and it's absolutely phenomenal stuff. So make sure to check that out. Can Wonderland has some great mini golf stuff too. So if you're into mini golf, that's definitely the place to be. And maybe you, honestly, Drew, maybe Can Wonderland is up your alley. So I don't
Probably
know.
is.
All right, so let's get this thing started with the Upon Review segment here, talking about, once again, how the Vikings fared after checking out the film against that Cincinnati Bengals game where the Vikings obviously destroyed them. Drew and I were talking before the show, kind of going through the things that we were going to talk about here, and I said we should do an Upon Review thing, and Drew's instant reaction was simply to say, I don't know how much more there is to say. And to a degree, I think he's right. The one thing that I want to get out of the way, though, is I don't think I gave Terrence Newman enough credit on the last episode here for how great he was. So after I did the coverage chart, 3 targets for Terrence Newman. 1 of them was intercepted. None of them were completed. So you could make a pretty strong argument, in my opinion, based off of those numbers along with the film. If you have had the opportunity to watch it once again, that this was the strongest game of his Vikings tenure, a game where Mackenzie Alexander was out, and obviously he needed to step up. So I was very impressed with the veteran, the old man, as we like to call him. I thought that he played phenomenal in he's had a different role this year. Obviously, it's been a different story for Terrence Newman, relative to his past of being, a former number 5 overall pick. I actually wrote something on Zone Coverage about him for today, if you guys want to check that out. But, what did you see watching film, from the All-22 perspective and whatnot after the game on Sunday?
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to make a note about the audio, just because I am. For those who don't know, I am away in Florida right now for Christmas, seeing my family, and so I am in a bedroom that's not terribly far away from all the ruckus going on. So if you do hear some background noise, that is why. But after watching the game, I think I noticed how little. This isn't supposed to be a slight to Case Keenum, but it's just how little he had to work for what he did, and maybe that's because of how well Pat Shurmur executed, or brought out the game plan, how well the players executed it, how little the Bengals cared, it seemed like, on defense. But I thought it was pretty clear that Case Keenum's throws outside of the Diggs one, which was, by the way, a dime, the touchdown, he didn't really have to try very hard to rack up the yards he did. I mean, on 3 of those long jet catches, there was nobody within 10 yards of Jarek, and he had several yards of open space after he caught the ball. So again, this isn't a slight to Case Keenum. He's been obviously way higher. He's exceeded his expectations. Much higher than anybody thought he would. And he's obviously, I thought he was snubbed from the Pro Bowl, to be honest with you, which we'll get into a little bit later. But I just thought this game was a gift wrap to him. And that 20 for 23 for 236, whatever his stat line was, it inflates a little bit of what he actually did on the field, which was complete a lot of short passes, and which Jerick McKinnon, Adam Thielen, these other guys kind of took for long gains after the catch. But
Right.
again, that's it's not a knock, and it's not a bad thing to have that happen. It's just something I noticed, and you have to wonder how much of that was Pat Shurmur's offensive game plan and his scheme, and how much of it was the Bengals defense just mailing in the season, knowing kind of the rumors swirling about their head coach leaving and their playoff berth gone, etc.
Right. Yeah, so obviously that's Case Keenum, like you said, was definitely, I thought it was a phenomenal performance, and I said on the last show that I think you could make an argument it was his finest of the season. Now, like you said, did he have to make a ton of tough throws? Not really. But when he, I'm going to go back to this argument that I made earlier this year about with Adam Thielen about after that game where I believe he only had 4 catches for something like 50 yards, and people were saying he didn't have a good game by the statistics, I should say. But when he was asked to get it done, he got it done. And like you said, he hit that post route to Stephon Diggs through basically double coverage. It was George Iocca. Can't pronounce that name at all, sorry. And then the cornerback, I believe, was William Jackson. I can't remember for sure on that. But there's 2 very good players right there in Diggs' face. So Diggs makes a great catch. Keenum makes a good throw. And that was, just a prime example of Case Keenum getting the job done per standard. So was he, asked to do a lot of dink and dunking? Yeah. But at the same time, the only real mistake I saw from him was he missed David Morgan on a play where basically Morgan and McKinnon were set free essentially into the wide open.
That was Kyle Carter, actually.
Kyle Carter.
Kyle Carter took the deep corner route and was wide open.
You're right. Yeah, and so, that was the one play where I thought he missed, and he still got, 30 yards out of McKinnon on that play or something like that. And, do I think that he certainly missed Kyle Carter on that play? Like, should he have thrown him the ball? Yes. But do I blame him for getting the ball in the hands of Jerick McKinnon with Kyle Carter running downfield in front of him? I don't know. Maybe that's you
can't blame him for it because it turned out to be such a big gain. But I mean, I don't know.
You can also look at
Depends
that.
on how much you want to nitpick, essentially.
Right. And I mean, I guess my point being here is, who would you rather have the ball in once the ball is actually in their hand? Who would you rather have it in their hand, Jerick McKinnon or Kyle Carter? I can see an argument here where he did make the correct decision, but like I just said, I think I would have thrown the ball to Kyle Carter there. So that was really the one mistake, I guess, that I saw in my review. So yeah, coming out of this thing, on the other end now, you've basically was a complete performance across the board. I mean, I stand by that Jerick McKinnon and Eric Kendricks were the 2 players of the game, probably. Also, Terrence Newman had a hell of a game. Thought Xavier Rhodes was very good, but Brandon LaFell got him a couple times, which I thought was funny. Just because when Xavier was on AJ Green, no problem. Like it was like 3 targets for 1 reception and 13 yards or something. Basically the same thing as Julio Jones. And then, once he was put on Brandon LaFell, LaFell actually made 2 really nice catches on him, which ended up inflating the numbers a little bit and made it seem like Xavier Rhodes didn't have a great game. The last note I want to make is I believe Trey Waynes allowed under 10 yards. I think it was 6 yards in total on 2 targets.
Andy Dalton threw for 120. So I mean, there's going to be. I mean, that it helps when the entire unit is completely shutting down everything the opposition wants to do. So I mean, it was a complete team performance, and it was a game that they had to win. Not just for playoff seeding and all that, but as a team that wants the first round bye, that wants to host the Super Bowl, you have to beat a 5-8 team at home, and you have to do so convincingly, and that's exactly what they did. So, I mean, when you look at the review, I think it's every phase of the game was dominated by the Vikings. You could point to each player that started the game, and you could go on and on about something they did well or how they dominated the other team. I will say the offensive line had some penalties, had some, I thought Rashad Hill didn't quite look like a left tackle out there. And then I thought the Bengals pass rush, when they were able to get home, or when Case Keenum's first read wasn't there, I thought they were able to get home, or at least, make some chaos, I guess, in the pocket. So maybe the pass protection could be one thing you're worried about with Rashad Hill at left tackle. But again, I mean, so many of the other phases of the game were dominated by the Vikings that it really didn't matter. And coming up this week too, now with another thing we'll talk about later with Aaron Rodgers being on IR, I would assume the Vikings will be favored in every phase of the game once again. So you would hope this type of performance as a repeat in Week 16 here.
Right, yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me that the Vikings' offensive line was probably the weakest point. Nick Easton also didn't look great. I thought that Pat Elflein did a good job getting out in front on screens. You saw him making a difference in that way. But it doesn't shock me just because we identified before the game that if there is a strength of this defense with all those guys out, it's guys like Geno Atkins who did his thing for the most part. And if you're Cincinnati, if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan and you're looking for something to pull away that was good from that game, Geno Atkins was still himself. He definitely got after it. He made guys look like fools, but that's just kind of what he does, right? So that was sort of an expectation going in, as far as I'm concerned, as complete of a performance as we've seen from the Minnesota Vikings in the last half decade or so. It's good to see, for sure. So that'll wrap up the upon review thing. Let's get into the Pro Bowl. So first and foremost, why don't you go down the line for me and tell me which 4 Minnesota Vikings are in the Pro Bowl and your initial reaction to those 4 selections.
Yeah, on offense, the Vikings had one player named to the Pro Bowl. That's Adam Thielen. He's the number 2 receiver voted to the Pro Bowl behind Julio Jones, it looks like. We've talked about him all season. What a performance he has had this season. He is 9 yards away from my prediction of 1,200 for the season. I would expect that he can get that in 2 games. And then defensively, the Vikings have Everson Griffin at defensive end. I believe he has 13 sacks this year, up towards the league lead. He is with DeMarcus Lawrence, and Cam Jordan is the other defensive ends. At linebacker, Anthony Barr earns a 3rd straight Pro Bowl. Last year was a bit controversial, kind of sliding in there as a replacement, but this year seems to be more of a legitimate case for a Pro Bowl season for Anthony Barr. And then Xavier Rhodes again. I think your favorite player on the Vikings, if not for Diggs. I think one of those two seems to be your favorite, but Xavier Rhodes, I think actually the leading vote getter at cornerback in the NFC. He, Patrick Peterson, Marshawn Lattimore, rookie for the Saints, and Darius Slay are your NFC cornerbacks in the Pro Bowl. A couple of the snubs again that I thought at least had they all had a very good chance to be named for the Pro Bowl. Very good cases, no pun intended, for themselves. Case Keenum is one of them. The guy, whatever you want to say about the situation he's in, etc. If you're getting talked about in the MVP conversation, you should probably be in the Pro Bowl ahead of the guys. Carson Wentz, for one, is one of the quarterbacks in there, and I would assume Case is going to be a high candidate to replace him.
Absolutely.
And then the other 2 guys are obviously, I think, the 2 most important guys on the defense, Harrison Smith and Linval Joseph. I think both of those guys are actually more important than the guys, Griffin, Barr, and Rhodes that did get in. I think those 2 guys are more important to this Mike Zimmer's unit, and I think they will be at least mentioned in the replacement, section of all these guys that end up not playing, and it's the 3-week process of figuring out who exactly is going to play in the Pro Bowl. But I am shocked, for one, that Harrison Smith did not get in, because I think Earl Thomas got in, Landon Collins got in, and then Malcolm Jenkins. I feel like those guys are second tier compared to Harrison Smith. I feel like Harrison Smith is in his own tier ahead of all 3 of those guys. But maybe that's why I'm not making the decisions on this. I don't know.
I'm with you. But before I get into Harrison Smith, because I have a few things to say about that, I want to go down the line and just say that. So Xavier Rhodes, if he wasn't if he hadn't been the highest vote getter at the cornerback position in the NFC, I would have been very unhappy. I think he's having a prolific season. I think this is one of the best cornerbacking seasons we've seen in a long time. He's literally shut down everyone except for Marvin Jones once, and the first time he actually did beat Marvin Jones. So tip of the cap to him, but it took him 2 tries. So that was a definitive certainty to me. I think that Rhodes actually has a case for player of the year, to be honest, or defensive player of the year, excuse me. So I also think that Harrison Smith does as well, which is, again, something I'm going to get to in about 2 seconds here. Anthony Barr, like you said, I think you made a really good point with Anthony Barr that last year, little bit controversial. You're right. I thought that, people talked a lot last year about Anthony Barr's intensity and his want to, I suppose. That's not in question this year at all. If people are questioning that still, I would probably judge you as someone that, not
people questioning it are probably Packers fans salty about the Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, sounds about right to me. Everson Griffin obviously was definitive. We were talking about him a couple weeks ago as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And then
by the way, leading vote getter at defensive end too, looks like. So
yeah, that was a lock for me, and then Adam Thielen was the lock as well. So the only questionable selection here was Anthony Barr, and I personally don't think that's questionable. I think he's been elite this year. And I'm with you. The snubs, for me, I should say this, that I understand that putting 10 Vikings in the Super Bowl, well, yeah, that too, but putting 10 Vikings in the Pro Bowl is not good for marketing purposes. So if you're the Pro Bowl people and the votes come in and there's a way to manipulate it a little bit, you probably don't put guys like Case Keenum and Linval Joseph in there just because they don't stand out like other guys do.
Right.
Those two are definitely snubs for me. Harrison Smith, like I've been saying for about 2 minutes here, is the biggest snub for sure. Eric Kendricks and Riley Reif both have a strong case, pun intended. Kendricks...
every time.
Kendricks, the knock on him is probably that he's had a bit of a roller coaster of a season. He wasn't awesome early on, but he was very good still. He has been elite the last 2 or 3 weeks, so maybe that's recency bias type thing for me. And then Riley Reif has missed a couple games here towards the tail end, but Tyrone Smith in Dallas has actually played fewer games than Riley Reif this year, and he made the Pro Bowl. So. You look at that type of stuff, and there's a way to justify all 5 of those guys actually being in as well, which would give the Vikings a grand total of 9 Pro Bowl players. And you could actually.
I think you could also Kyle Rudolph. I think he's been very. I mean, they only put 2 in, and that Zach Ertz and Jimmy Graham were both very, worthy of the selection. But I will say this about Jimmy Graham: he has -1 receiving yards the last 2 weeks. And so Kyle Rudolph, I think in that regard, I mean, obviously the votes have been kind of piling up over the last few weeks, but Kyle Rudolph has a very strong argument, I would say. But I don't fault them for ending up with those 2 guys at tight end, Ertz and Graham. But again, I think Rudolph is probably the guy right behind them that if one of them, does not play in the Pro Bowl for whatever reason, I would assume Rudolph would be the one to jump in and replace whichever one that is.
And, obviously it doesn't really matter because the Vikings are going to the Super Bowl. So just had to put just had to put that one out there. So, the one thing that sucks about some of these guys getting snubbed, I was talking about this with Nate Denny on Twitter earlier today, and that it sucks because some of these guys have stuff in their contract that literally gives them.
That's what I was going to mention. Yeah,
it gives them important. Like $500,000 more in their bank account if they make the Pro Bowl. So for guys like Rhodes, Barr, Everson, and Thielen, that's awesome for them. But you look at the guys who got snubbed, and these are guys that are not making a ton of money for the most part, with exception to Linval and Harry, and Reif, I guess, as well. Yeah, I guess Rudolph too, but Case Keenum.
They're all making a lot of money besides Case.
They're all making a lot of money, no kidding. But like Case Keenum and Eric Kendricks playing on his rookie deal right now, he probably would love to have that extra money in his bank account just for, I mean, who wouldn't? And then Case Keenum obviously has earned a large paycheck, and he's going to get paid this offseason. But I'm sure, as anyone would, he would like to have that extra money in his bank account right now. So that part sucks. But that's really the only thing I have to say. I mean, I don't care about the Pro Bowl. I don't know about you, but it's not really.
Yeah, I mean, I stopped caring about it. I mean, again, this people are probably going to take this wrong way, but when Teddy Bridgewater got selected for the Pro Bowl in 2015, that was to me like that kind of alerted me, like, okay, this thing's not for real. It's not very legit if they're going to their 8th, 9th, 10th quarterback down the list to participate in the game so that was the year I think Drew Brees didn't play, Aaron Rodgers didn't play, Russell Wilson didn't play. I mean, all these guys didn't play, and it's just it's become a joke because nobody wants to play it, and the effort obviously isn't there because nobody wants to get hurt. They have to find something. I kind of always bring up the NBA All-Star Weekend, something like that, where the skills competition part of things is a little bit more of a focus. There's an entire prime time schedule set
Right.
for that type of thing. When they have they do have those quarterback accuracy contests and whatnot, but that needs to be, I think, more of a focus in their advertising and the branding and the marketing for the Pro Bowl events, because people kind of just think of it as the game, and then in the game it's kind of like the NBA game where nobody gives an effort, but it's not an entire weekend of events in the NFL as it is in the NBA, and that's why I think the NBA All-Star Weekend has been so popular and is killing the NFL in that aspect. I think the NFL needs to kind of move into that form of marketing for that weekend, and I think then that will begin the revival of what is the Pro Bowl, or I guess what used to be the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, the football isn't really conducive to an all-star game, right? Just because obviously the number one thing about the Pro Bowl, the reason why a lot of players are hurt when the Pro Bowl rolls around, is first and foremost they don't want to get injured. Think about like Tyler Eifert from Cincinnati a couple of years back. I believe he hurt himself in the Pro Bowl, and he's played sparingly since. A lot of players will look at Eifert there, and very promising young tight end, obviously very talented out of Notre Dame, and look at that situation and be like, maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe I should just take the trip to Orlando or Hawaii or wherever the hell it is now, and hang out with the boys, but not actually play, just because you don't want to get hurt. It's literally taking money out of your pocket, and like it's not a competitive game, but it's a game that you can get injured very easily just on accident. I mean, people aren't laying dudes out like Sean Taylor hitting Brian Moorman did, but like back in the day, in what was that, 2006 or something like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you fall awkwardly, non-contact injuries. It just leaves you susceptible to injuries. So I get why players don't want to play in it. And I totally agree with you that more skills competition type things would be good. There's a lot of things that you can do. I mean, think about, for example, Arizona. The Cardinals, they have the thing where the quarterbacks compete, and then the one that loses, Patrick Peterson's also involved in this, hilariously. The one that loses has to wear something ridiculous.
Yeah, that's right.
On the flight to wherever they're going. That type of thing, throwing a ball into a trash can 40 yards downfield or something like that. See who's the most accurate quarterback, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That you could give me 2 hours to think of 15 events, and I bet you I could come up with a solid list of things that football players could do. I mean, hell, you could do combine drills, and people would enjoy that too.
Yeah, I mean, do like a 40-yard dash even for like each position or something like that. I feel like that would do really well.
See who the fastest Linval Joseph player is.
Like the fastest nose tackle, like a 40-yard dash for nose tackles, and they all run at the same time. So it's like a race,
right?
Or something like that. Like
how play like Red Rover with them. Like, how funny would that? Yeah. So I mean, we've been thinking
speed walking competition. Take a page out of the Green Bay Packers book from they did the touchdown celebration last week. All the receivers at a speed walking competition. Yeah, something like that. I mean,
there's so many options, and we're literally coming up with this on the spot right now. Like, the NFL has so much money and so much. I don't want to say time, but they have so many assets and so many people hired to do objectives for them that you'd think that they could hire a creative mind to just come up with something a little bit better than whatever the hell the Pro Bowl has become. Just before we move into this Rodgers news, we could talk a little bit about some of this injury stuff as well. Harrison Smith, man, that's so embarrassing that he's not in the Pro Bowl.
It's unbelievable.
So here's
asinine. As Stephen A. Smith would say, it's asinine.
So here's why it's embarrassing. So first of all, he's the best safety in the NFL. He is. Sorry, Earl Thomas. Sorry, Cam Chancellor. Sorry, Rashad Jones, whoever, Malcolm Jenkins, whoever you want to go with here. Harrison Smith is the best safety in the NFL. He makes literally one or two mistakes every 3 weeks. So he's the best safety in the NFL, so that sucks. But what I understand is that the casual fan doesn't watch the safety position just inherently, because sometimes it's not even on the screen from the regular view. So I understand that people don't get. There are people who love watching football but maybe don't quite understand what's always going on. My dad, for example, knows nothing about football. I mean, I'm sure he'd watch it if I'm sitting there with him, but if he's watching it, he's not seeing anywhere close to the same thing I am. So I get it when people don't know that Linval Joseph is dominant or that Harrison Smith is dominant. What makes this a real travesty is that Harrison Smith has been in the Pro Bowl twice before. So you have you have history to suggest that he is a dominant player. Like, he's been there before. Why, that's how a lot of people vote, right? A lot of people are like, oh, I remember this guy was in the Pro Bowl last year. Let's vote him in. So that's stupid. And then, excuse me, number 2 is that he has been a first-team All-Pro according to Pro Football Focus twice. So for the advanced stats people, the people that love those, grades and that type of thing, I personally use it as a tool as opposed to law. I've said that a million times in the past, but if you're someone that really buys into Pro Football Focus, if they're telling you like year after year that Harrison Smith is the greatest safety in the NFL right now, I mean, I just don't get it. What more do you need to see? What more proof do you need? I think the evidence is right in front of everyone's face. He comes up and makes these unbelievable tackles. Last week, there was 2 receptions on his target sheet for me. One of them was that one play, probably his worst play of the year, like you mentioned before, with Brandon LaFell burning him downfield. He kind of came up a little too quick. And then the other one was a 5-yard loss on a screen play that he sniffed out from, I believe, 8 yards back and got to the spot of the ball basically before Andy Dalton could even release the football. So I just want to know what more you guys need to see. That's for the people that didn't vote for Harrison Smith, if there are non-Vikings fans, because I think Vikings fans for the most part know that this guy is extremely dominant. I think that Vikings Nation is very educated in that regard. But for people that aren't Vikings fans, you've seen him play well 3 times on national TV, I believe, this year, right? What more do you need to see to vote for this guy? Are you just voting for your personal safety? Which I understand. Again, I get that. You support your players. We do the same thing, right? I voted for Stephon Diggs to the Pro Bowl. Does he deserve to be in the Pro Bowl?
No.
Probably not. Maybe as a super injury replacement a la Teddy Bridgewater. But so I get that perspective. But like, Harrison Smith is so dominant, and for the most part, when I go on to the official the official web page where they give you like all the lists of options and whatnot, and it's updated throughout, which I didn't do this year, by the way. First time in a really long time that I didn't do that, and that just shows you how little I care about the Pro Bowl. I would look at that list, and I always try to be as objective as possible, put the best guys in the Pro Bowl, because if you put the best guys in the Pro Bowl, in theory, that's going to make the game way better, right? So that's what I try to do, and if I see Harrison Smith's name on there, it's an immediate click and lock it in. Like, it's not right. It's not even close. Like, I don't like he could be playing for the the Los Angeles Chargers and have I would be watching him from very, very far away. Like, not caring at all about the AFC. We only watch the AFC basically to do our picks for the week. And just to be educated when Vikings play, I don't know, the Cincinnati Bengals. But my point being here, what I'm ramping up to, the 10-second version of this, is that Harrison Smith is so damn dominant that there's no excuse. And then on top of that, he's been there before, so there's really no excuse. So Harrison Smith is the ultimate snub this year. I think that guys like on NFL on the NFL.com page, I believe it's Bucky Brooks that does the Pro Bowl snubs list, or Daniel Jeremiah, one of those 2 guys, does the Pro Bowl snubs every year. You can bet your ass that Harrison Smith will be on that list. That's an absolute lock, guaranteed.
There will be at least 2 Vikings in that list, I would assume.
I would think that Riley Reif should probably be on there as well. Case Keenum also deserve. I mean, there's a lot of really good quarterbacks, but there's also a lot of really injured quarterbacks right now. So I think that you look at Case Keenum's numbers, and it's like, what more do you want to see? So a lot of Pro Bowl snubs, but what else is new? I mean, did anyone expect the Vikings to get an honest Pro Bowl committee? I mean, they did a fairly good job overall, I thought, this year in terms of picking the best talent, but Case Keenum needs to be in there. He needs to be in there. Harrison Smith needs to be in there. Linval Joseph definitely needs to be in there. Right. I mean, Riley Reif needs to be in there too. Like Eric Kendricks and Kyle Rudolph are really the only 2 Pro Bowl snubs where I have like a legit understanding of why they're not there. So yeah, I could see 7 Vikings getting into the Pro Bowl eventually, if not 9.
Sure. I thought it's funny, by the way, that this is kind of a side note, but the NFC special teams is all Rams. Johnny Hecker, punter; Greg Sirline, kicker; and then Pharaoh Cooper, a return specialist.
I didn't know that Pharaoh Cooper was playing as well as he was. That's good to see. I saw that Budda Baker The
Yeah,
rookie.
he's the special team ace
Right.
that made it.
Which
So
does that shock you at all based off what we talked about in April on his his film?
oh no,
and his
not at all.
versatility? I thought that was great to see. So congrats to Buddha, one of the
Yeah,
one of the
Buddha.
best names in
Also,
the NFL right now.
Matthew Slater made it in the AFC as a special teams ace for like the 27th year in a row.
Right, that's nothing new.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing about my take about Linval and Harrison Smith.
Yeah.
About them being the most important players on the defense. Fair if you don't agree with me on that, like as in terms of the overall defensive output, but as far as the run defense goes, I think they are absolutely the top two important players because Linval Joseph clogs the middle by taking two blockers. Either he takes two run blockers and takes up that space and eats them and allows other guys to get a free chance or free shot at the running back, or he penetrates through the line and creates a misdirection for the running back and forces him to go a different direction than he wanted to, or where the play was designed. So up front, he's dominant. Okay, so the offense tries to run away from Linval Joseph. They go outside. Then that's where Harrison Smith comes in to set the edge, force the ball back inside, where those linebackers and where Linval Joseph or Tom Johnson, all these other guys can make that tackle. So those two guys, their role of clogging the middle, and then for Linval Joseph and then Harrison Smith setting the edge, they dominate that run defense. And the success for the Vikings this year, I believe they're top 5 in the league in yards per carry allowed. That's because of those two guys primarily. So I think in that aspect, and these are things that aren't appreciated by Pro Bowl voters ever. So I guess I can understand that to some degree, that they're being snubbed because run defense is not glorified in Pro Bowl voting. But that's when I see those guys are the most important players on the defense, I for sure mean that when it pertains to run defense. I can understand a differing opinion when it comes to like overall defensive performance, including the passing defense and third down stops and whatnot. But against the run, those two guys for sure set the tone and lead this defense and allowing the least or one of the least yards per carry numbers in the NFL.
Absolutely. So let's hop into this injury stuff, and primarily we'll talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers and what that means. Just to give you guys a couple updates here, I did talk to a couple of people today that gave me some updates on Riley Reif's injury and Mackenzie Alexander's injury. Mackenzie Alexander, from what I understand, is probably going to be a game time decision. What you want to take away here from that, though, is that he is progressing, and that by the time the postseason does roll around, he should be ready to go and should be able to continue what has been a very strong season from him. So that's my major takeaway on that. Good to see that Mackenzie is feeling it a little bit and getting back up to speed. And if he's not able to go, you should trust Terrence Newman at this point to get the job done, especially with Brett Hundley going to be at quarterback. And then secondly, Riley Reif, it sounds like he's probably going to be out on Sunday again. So that's going to leave things up to Rashad Hill, who, like Drew said, a bit of an uneven performance, probably more of a right tackle, but I do like him as a solid replacement level player who is able to get the job done at different points in time. So probably expect more screens and stuff like that, manufactured touches just to get the ball out of cases.
Oh, yeah. I think that was part of it, too, against the Bengals.
Right.
The game plan, I'm sure part of it was, they didn't have Riley Reif at left tackle, so they had to create some things to make things easier for Keenum and allow him to get the ball out, and so he didn't have to sit back there and wait for longer routes to develop with a rather unproven left tackle in there.
Right. Okay, so moving on to Aaron Rodgers, your favorite player in the NFL, obviously. So why don't you go ahead and break down for me what the hell happened with Aaron Rodgers this week?
Well, what happened was I think the Packers still had a chance at the playoffs. And so he goes out there against the Panthers and he tries to win in this game when he's clearly not 100%. Throws 3 interceptions. I thought it was kind of funny because, and I hate talking about Packers fans and what they think and all of this because they're pretty much irrelevant to me. But I thought it was just funny how the whole fan base goes, oh, and I was part of this group for what it's worth. I kind of joined in this group saying, oh, they're going to run the table, they're going to make the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers is going to come back and they're going to do it. And then he throws 3 picks. They lose to the Panthers, and what should have been pretty convincing fashion, although they got a lucky onside kick at the end of the game. But and then all of a sudden they the excuses come out. Well, he wasn't 100%. Well, yeah, he wasn't. But that's you don't get to make that excuse when you claim boldly that they were going to run the table as he comes back. So I don't know. That part's kind of funny to me. And again, I'm probably guilty of this because those of you who listen to the show know how much I like Aaron Rodgers and how much I think the hate for him is not warranted among Vikings fans. But it's it kind of sucks for me because I wanted to see the Vikings beat Aaron Rodgers.
I did too.
Because I think it would be really fun to watch Aaron Rodgers play against this Vikings defense, which I think is the best Vikings defense he will have faced in his career. But at the same time,
maybe the best defense period too.
Right. That's true. That is very true. But at the same time, the Vikings do need wins right now to secure a number 2 seed in the first round bye, then B, to have a chance at the number 1 seed. Hoping for some Eagles losses there, but the Vikings do need wins, and obviously no Aaron Rodgers on the field is absolutely going to help their cause.
Absolutely. So, one thing. So, first of all, Packers fans are insufferable. I mean, can I just say real quick?
Yeah, that's pretty normal. That's pretty standard opinion. I think at this point, pretty standard.
I already went on this rant on Twitter earlier today, but like, if you're, I'm not gonna say much about this, but like, if you're wishing injury on a Vikings player, particularly Anthony Barr,
if you're wishing injury on any player or anybody at all,
get out.
You're probably not doing the right thing.
Yeah, you need to stop with that. Like, I'm sorry your Packers aren't in the postseason, like, but you know what? We don't wish injury on anyone. We didn't wish injury on the Cowboys' offensive line last year when we were rotating offensive tackles every other week. Like, maybe some Vikings fans did. I guess I shouldn't speak for all of us as a whole because I'm sure there are some really crappy Vikings fans out there. But the point being here is just don't do that, please. Like, just don't be that guy. Let's make the game better. It's better when everyone's healthy. When we're playing.
If you're upset about Anthony Barr hurting Aaron Rodgers, maybe direct your attention to the front office of the Packers, who built a team that relies solely on the health of one player.
Right.
And when that one player goes down, the entire team collapses and cannot make the playoffs. So,
dude, Ted Thompson sucks, man. I've been saying this like this was. Remember when this was a hot take? When I went on that Ted Thompson.
What were they? What was their record when Rodgers went out? Like 5-1, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. They were 5-1 or 4-1 or 5-1, something like that. And now they're 7-7.
Yeah.
And they've barely scraped by the Browns last week or 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, this roster's not good. It's not good when Aaron Rodgers is out. And even when he's in, it's still not good. He's just that good of a quarterback.
They almost lost to the Browns last week, and they almost fulfilled my prediction, too. And it went to overtime. Or 2 weeks ago. Was that 2 weeks ago?
Well, they were down 14 going to the fourth quarter. I mean, they should have won that game if it wasn't for the Browns being the Browns.
Yeah. So, I mean, just don't do that. Don't do that. Change the culture. Make things better. You want everyone on the field because ultimately, if everyone's healthy in the league, if you get the best 22 to 27 players or whatever it is rotating in, there's no excuses for anyone. It's just straight up the better team wins.
I mean, it must really suck to play with your backup quarterback. It must really suck.
And your backup running back. I feel your guys' pain. Shout out. Yeah, my God.
Now, a question for you: does Anthony Barr's very legal hit that injured Aaron Rodgers, is that going to end up signifying a passing of the torch in the NFC North from the Packers to the Vikings?
I mean, I don't think that it needed to be that. I think that obviously helped the cause. But like we've been saying before, the Vikings aren't playing against Aaron Rodgers every week. They're playing against other good teams, and they're beating really good teams. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is basically the LeBron James of the NFL, right? He manipulates the situation to his favor. He's extremely talented and does a lot of things. He has a voice in the community and the upper management because of how important he is. But when he gets hurt, everything falls apart. Everything falls to pieces real quick. So, that's how it goes. That's the NFL. Injuries are part of the game. So, yes, I think to a degree that's probably the moment that people will remember as the reason why, not the reason, but the moment that the Vikings.
It's the reason Packers fans will remember.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, to a degree, I think so. Here's what I want to ask you then in response to that, and then we can basically wrap up the show here. I think this will be about it. Is that I saw on Twitter today a couple people arguing did Aaron Rodgers quit on his team by coming back for one game? He loses. He says he's healthy and ready to go, right? That's what he said. I'm telling you what he said, his words, not not anything else. That's what he said. I have been arguing that I don't think he's healthy anyways. So understand that perspective.
He's not healthy.
Right. But did he quit on his team by coming back for one game? You get eliminated on Monday night with the Tampa Bay loss, and then all of a sudden he heads back to IR. So is this another example of Aaron Rodgers being arrogant? Because
this is a reach. This is a very hard reach.
I'm saying I saw this on Twitter. I'm explaining the perspective more, not that I necessarily agree.
I'm not saying you're the one reaching, but somebody's reaching because it's very. I mean, we don't know what's actually being said inside, behind the scenes with the Packers, right? We don't know if it's Rodgers shutting himself down, which is it's possible, but I would imagine the front office is saying, wow, okay, this guy is the most valuable player in the league in terms of how much he can lift the team and lift our roster up from one of the worst in the league to, playoff contenders. And so let's shut this guy down and make sure this collarbone injury doesn't get worse in these last 2 weeks, and so that he's 100% healthy for next year, and we can, restart a playoff streak, essentially. So I can't imagine that he would voluntarily, quit because, again, I really think he wants revenge on the Vikings. I feel like that's the type of person he is.
Right.
And the way he reacted to the Bark thing, I think he would really want to stick it to the Vikings. But my hunch is that the Packers management says, nope, you're too valuable. We don't need you getting hurt in a meaningless game because, I would say that if the Falcons had lost on Monday night and the Packers were still alive, I would bet he plays.
I would too.
But they're gone, and Aaron Rodgers is his play is useless now the rest of the season, so why not shut him down I guess make a play for next year and make sure he's healthy for it. So that's what I think happened, and I really think that take is reaching. And that's another example of people finding reasons to hate Aaron Rodgers when he really doesn't, in my opinion, deserve a whole lot of it.
Yeah, I'm honestly with you on this one. I actually agree with your take. So
you should be with me on this one.
I think I am. Yeah. So I mean, I still hate Aaron Rodgers. I think he's an arrogant prick. But that's my opinion. I try to be objective as much as possible on this show for what it's worth. But I also like to tell you guys my thoughts sometimes. So I think he's a douche, but he's also the most valuable player in this league, as Drew said. It's pretty clear after what's happened here to the Packers this season. Pretty definitive. I mean, this is a team that got to the NFC Championship last year. I mean, this team is now trash juice, So it is what it is. The Vikings are taking over. The Vikings are NFC North champions. Is Aaron Rodgers going down part of that? To a degree, yes. Did the Vikings earn the NFC Championship on their own? Absolutely. I mean, they won 11 games. Only one of those games has been against the Packers. So that means that they would have basically gotten into the playoffs anyways with 10 other wins. Mm-hmm. So it is what it is. Think about it however you want. Spin it however you want. If you're a Packers fan, cry about it however you want. But I'm sick of it personally, and I'm done talking about it. The Vikings are good. Sorry, Bears fans. Sorry, Packers fans. Sorry,
we're sorry
Lions
for
fans.
being good. We're sorry for the Vikings being better than your team.
Right. Yeah. And really, by the way, I'm not sorry at all. So I believe that's the show today. We didn't get any Twitter questions today. That's fine. But maybe do that if you like the Twitter questions section, I guess, of the show. If you enjoy us responding to thoughts and stuff.
Yeah. Instead of retweeting and liking the post on Twitter, and then just ignoring the whole premise of the tweet by not sending us a question or a take or a thought about the Vikings, maybe you should try and do that, and then it'll help us produce a better show and help you, be more engaging as a listener, and it'll help us become better as entertainers, I guess. Maybe that we're entertainers, but I don't really want to. I don't want to count myself as an entertainer because I don't feel like I'm all that entertaining sometimes. But
whatever you consider us to be, it definitely helps the show. So if you guys could do that in the future, awesome. If you can't, I know you guys are busy. I know you have stuff going on. That's cool too. But I just want to say that we will accept all takes. If you want to send in a take that you think that Anthony Barr is a good linebacker and our thoughts on that, we'll respond to that.
If you want to say something about frozen pizza, fine by me. Or Little Caesars pizza, that would be welcomed as well.
I don't. But anyways, that is the show for today. Thanks as always for tuning in. We'll be back later on this week. I believe we're gonna have the show up on Thursday, right? Because we got a Saturday game, and obviously Drew, like you said,
we'll try. Yeah. Again, with me being down in Florida for Christmas with the family, it's causing some scheduling uncertainties. So we're trying to work around those. We're also trying to get a guest on for our next one. a buddy of ours that writes about the Green Bay Packers. I think it'll be fun to get his thoughts on what has transpired this season for the Packers. So
absolutely,
we'll try and get that figured out, and at the very latest, we'll have it up on Friday. But be on the lookout for it on Thursday as well.
Yeah, so the best way to keep updated with the show on these kind of already scheduled weeks, and the best way obviously to do that is to follow us on Twitter at VikingsATLPod, myself, Robert Reidell, Reidell, at Drew Mahowald, Mahowald. That's the best place to get updates from us, just because we don't use our Facebook page as much as we should maybe. We don't use our Instagram page as much as we should, which is actually just my Instagram page. So stuff like that, like it's just, Twitter is the best place to get updates about the show. So if you care about the show, make a Twitter account. I think Twitter's, I've hated Twitter for so long, and I think that it's growing on me a bit. So at least as a Google search type thing, that's been the best thing for me always. I've been using Twitter for that reason for 4 years. So if you need a reason to get Twitter, if you need a reason to get Twitter to follow the show and get your updates, that's a great reason in my personal opinion. So those are the three spots to find myself, Drew, and then obviously the podcast account. So there's that. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, ZoneCoverage.com. I actually can't find the show there, but make sure to check out Zone Coverage. The Vikings team there alongside myself, Sam Ekstrom and Arif Hassan, do phenomenal work. I don't really need to say that, I feel like, just because I think it's pretty damn clear that those two guys are very good at what they do. But you can check out like Sam's podcast with Sage Rosenfels. Arif did a great article earlier this week. I'm trying to remember. He obviously talked about the Pro Bowl snubs and his reaction to that type of thing. He does great stuff with that. Also, Luke Inman did some film review stuff of Eric Kendricks' pick six, and Luke has a very educated opinion on football, X's and O's and stuff like that. So make sure to check out all of those things. My mailbag will be up on Thursday, so use the hashtag VGTweet on Twitter to send in questions for me on that, or you can send it to my email address, bj@bjreidell.com. That's new, so make sure to do that if you're not someone who uses Twitter or whatever it is. That's Reidell one more time. And yeah, so unless you got any final thoughts, CastBox. Oh, that's one thing. That's one thing we got to get on here. CastBox has been very good to us. They've been very kind with us, and we're trying to work them more and more into kind of our repertoire, because they are I think they have a really good product for podcast listeners. Like if you're someone who strictly enjoys listening to podcasts as opposed to music, iTunes is like an all-purpose type thing where you can do music, video, all that type of stuff. But CastBox is cool because it's literally, I think it's a very great medium for podcast listening. So check out CastBox. We're up on there. I noticed that we have already a ton of subscribers on there. We're really appreciative of you guys for jumping in there and do that. And then, of course, we're on YouTube. So if you enjoy watching us talk as opposed to listening to us talk, make sure to go on YouTube. It's the About the Labor channel now, not the Vikings Territory channel. We had to make that switch when I made my transition over to Zone Coverage. And we could use, some more subscribers, some more likes. As I've said in the past, it's not about that we care about the likes and the subscribers. It's more that when you do that, our show pops up in the most recently watched type thing, or the queue that basically makes suggestions to you about what you should be watching, stuff like that. So we'd appreciate any of that stuff, and obviously we'll respond to all your comments and questions and whatnot on that YouTube page. Drew and I think, do a pretty good job of getting to as many questions and thoughts and reactions and hate mail and whatever it is on that YouTube page. So
this has been a very concise, send-off to the show. You're really good at this.
I'm trying. I'm working on it. So that's about it. Make sure to do all that stuff if you enjoy the show. If you don't, it is what it is. Do your thing. Give us the downvote if you think so. But also, if you give us a downvote, can you give us some constructive criticism as well? Just because I'd like to know what we're doing. I want to fix it if we're doing something poorly. So please let us know. We appreciate all that stuff, and you know where to find us now. So no excuses to you guys either. Period. So thanks, folks. Enjoy the fact that the Vikings are the NFC North champions and fighting for that number 2 seed starting this week. I believe they lock it down if they win against the Packers here. And if the Eagles lose, we set up a Week 17 situation with a possibility, an outside possibility, I should say, to lock down that number 1 seed. So it's exciting times in Minnesota. Be optimistic. Have some faith. Have some trust in Mike Zimmer. I think what he's doing is great. So thanks for listening as always, and we will catch you guys later on this week.